What's up, everyone, and welcome. You are watching Well-Rounded Individual. I'm your host, Adam Schindler, and today I have another great show for you. I have an incredible guest for you. He is one of my best friends. He is a family man, a father. He could sell ice to an Eskimo, a real well-rounded individual. Please welcome Max Terrell. Welcome to the show, brother. How are you?
Thanks, Adam. Thank you for having me on, my guy.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Doing good.
Excellent. So, super happy that you could make the time to be here because, I really just hold you in such high regards, as a man, a dad, a well-rounded person, but just someone who just is like of pure intention. You are looking to help people, and I really admire that about you. You've been through a lot, and I think you have a great story to tell, and you're going to help a lot of people and add a lot of value to the show. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm honored to be on. When you asked me to be on the podcast, I think I look up to you. So, I think the definition of well-rounded individual, when you look a lot out of it, it's you. So I'm glad you're doing this podcast because that's huge. Because you, as well, my friend, have a lot of impact to give to the world.
Cool. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. When I was coming up with a name, I was like trying to think of what could be catchy. Like, I don't want to call it like my name and stuff like that. And I was like, you know what? I think, multiple people are like, you know what? You're a really well-rounded individual. I'm like, that's it. That's the one.
That's perfect.
That's how we got here. But speaking of well-rounded individuals, what would you say, what are some characteristics or how would you define that?
Man, well-rounded individual definitely has been through a lot in life. You had a girl, Lorraine.
Lorraine, yeah.
She was on and she talked about it, the sphere, like being able to move it. I really love that definition. I always said you have to be able to pivot because life's going to hand you some ups and downs. Life's going to hand you some things that, challenges along the way. And, being able to handle those is a part of being a well-rounded individual. Also, I think, the promises you keep to yourself when you're going to bed at night. Are you having more nights where you're like, man, I fucked it up today? Like I killed it.
Mm-hmm.
Or are you having more nights where you're like, I could have done this, I could have done that. Those are some things that I think when you're going to bed at night and you're like, man, I did the things I said I was going to set out and do today in this world. I think, another big part of that well-rounded individual.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of my favorite sayings too, is like true confidence is built in keeping the promises that you've made to yourself.
For sure.
And I think we've said this before here, doing what you say and saying what you do.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
And that's what builds you credibility too, right? You can't be well-rounded if you're a flake. You can't be well-rounded if someone's thinking like, oh, should we include this person in whatever it may be? And you know what? Maybe they'll show up. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So holding your word, I think that's a great one as well.
For sure. One of my great mentors, Pete, my brother-in-law, he's taught me so much about being a man in life, just not having my father there. And so I remember, one of the things when I was getting clean, he had said, being a man is really just holding true to the commitments that you say you're going to do. And, be wary about the commitments you're putting out in life. Because, if you're saying yes to too many people, you're saying no to other things like your children or your wife or other things like that. So
Right.
Knowing what, is going to tip you so that way you could fill your glass to fill other people's glasses.
Right. Yeah. And honestly, I love what you said there because no is powerful. Using no. So a lot of times, especially as like people who are well-rounded and many times we're ambitious and we want to help and we want to serve and to bring value. But there are times when you can't do everything and you have to say no and you have to prioritize what is most important. Right. And I think it comes back to that, like figuring out a hierarchy of what's valuable to you and not trying to be everything for everyone because you cannot be that.
No, for sure. I think another well-rounded individual is somebody that is looking to beat who's in the mirror and nobody else is his competitor. Thinking about that huge today. Because when you start to look at, what is this person doing or what is that person doing, you're letting them dictate your next move
Right.
by just letting them be in your head.
Mm-hmm.
And really, you're at your best when you're doing what's going to get you better than who you were yesterday.
Right.
Because at that point, you know what it takes. Okay, so what do I need to do tomorrow to be just 1% better?
Right.
I think that's another big definition of well-rounded individual.
Focusing on yourself.
Yeah.
That's a great meme. I mean, it's Olympic season, and they have that great meme where the two swimmers in the pool, and the guy who finishes gold is looking straight forward, and the guy who finishes second is looking over at the guy who finishes gold. And it says, winners focus on themselves and losers focus on winners.
Facts.
And man, that is hard to overcome sometimes, because we see other people, especially in today's day and age, like with social media and just like the ability to curate what can look like perfection can sometimes be like, oh man, am I doing enough? I'm not doing what this person is doing. Doesn't matter, bro. Doesn't matter, because you know why? It's not you.
And
You do you. Build every day.
yeah.
Compound interest.
And it disturbs your happiness when you're looking at them, right? Like when you're looking at that and you're not focusing on your journey, which, I mean, really, like they always say that cliche, it's not about the destination. It's really all about the journey. And truly, I think that's where you find happiness too, is when you're focused on the journey and not the outcome,
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you're focusing on, other people's lanes and not your own lane, you're very unhappy because you're always a step behind. You're reacting to their move.
The happiness of pursuit.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I
for
love
sure.
it. Excellent. So let's take it back a little bit, right? So you mentioned getting clean, and I want to talk about this, but I don't want to focus everything on it.
No, for sure.
Because I think it's super valuable. Because you've overcome an addiction, heroin addiction, correct?
Yeah.
And you've been clean for 12 years now, coming up.
Coming up on 12 years, December 6th, 2000.
Okay. So let's talk about like how you were introduced to that. How did that happen?
Yeah. I grew up in St. George, Utah, small town. Really, there was kind of like two kind of cliques, LDS religion and then kind of just the outside of it. I really grew up in the party side of things. I was always drinking, always out partying, always having fun. Was a cook for a long time. Ended up just hanging out with the wrong crowd and got involved with pain pills at first. It was Lortabs. Then went on to oxycodone. From oxycodone, it just kind of escalated. It's an expensive one. So then, your next best option when you run out of money is heroin. And that's kind of the path that took me on there. But growing up in St. George to moving to Vegas, I think when I got to Vegas, St. George was always very bubbled. Like I remember always talking about it. Like I feel like there's an eye always watching you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the police knew my name. So going to Vegas, it really was sink or swim, and you either can end up overdosing and dying, and that's all your life amounts to, or you start to question like I'm worth more, like, and start to discover that, right? Like, there's more here and there's more to this. So I think through Vegas, I love that sink or swim mentality. I started to swim and I started to realize like addiction wasn't me and I needed to move on from this. I had a lot of help from a lot of friends. My brother-in-law, Pete, being a huge help to me, as well as my sister. I mean, they helped me through a lot in my life. But he also taught me a lot in just overall being a good human. I think a lot of me wanting to give back now is from him, and that's huge because he's always the one that's like trying to, help the next person up.
Right.
And I think that's been great. I've looked up to him a lot for father figure advice, sales advice, business advice, damn near everything.
Right.
Yeah.
That's good. And I love that what I'm hearing you say is that do you think you could have done it on your own? Or was it crucial to have that support system?
It's very crucial to have that support system. And I believe however you get clean, and that's what matters the most.
Right.
And it's so funny, talking to my brother-in-law, he'd be like, "It was all you. It had
Mhm.
nothing to do with me." And that was something he instilled in me, and I love that. And yeah, he was right. It was a lot to do with me, but I had a lot of help from him. And so now when I try to help people in life, I try to make sure they know as well as I knew what the message he was trying to deliver to me that day.
You're doing the work.
You're doing it. It's because of you. You're in there with your head, going through the voices that are telling you you suck, you can't do it, dude, you might as well just die, you're worthless. All of them.
Mhm.
So he knew where you're at there, and kind of just helped me to encourage me to give me the power to say it is me. It is me.
Yeah.
And I am the beast and I am the storm
Yeah.
and you ain't going to fuck with me.
I had,
So I love that about him.
yeah.
And that's what I try to instill when I help others.
Yeah. And that's what I love about you, man. You just got me fucking pumped up. Like, seriously, like giving yourself the credit, right? We live in a world where like you want to give other people help and stuff, but to be a person who continually does great things, you have to have that inner confidence of, I am the storm,
I am the storm. Yeah,
if you want to do extraordinary things.
for sure. And I think my brother-in-law realized that, and that's what he realized or established in me. And I think that he's absolutely right, because there's going to be, and he knew this, dark days where you're by yourself and you don't have him and you can't look to him. I know that he lost his father when he was young and he lost his mother. So, there's days where you don't get to look to those people that you looked up to for questions. And it's like, what do? Do you just stop moving? And answer is fuck no. Like, they would want you to press forward.
Right.
They would want you to conquer, succeed, and move on.
Right. And I think a lot of times, especially when bad things happen, we forget that, yeah, life is short, but also it's also long. That screwing something up or making a mistake doesn't have to drag you down, right? The best way to get over it is to get your ass up, brush your ass off, and do what you can do next.
For sure.
Right? So that's amazing. And having that confidence and knowing, do you think that this is something that I was kind of going to wait a little bit longer to ask you into the conversation, but it seems appropriate now. Because do you feel like learning the hard way is mandatory in order to come out the other side the way that you have? You feel like you needed to learn a lot of lessons the hard way?
I hope not, because I would hate for my kids to have to go through some of the life lessons to learn what I've done in my life. I hope you could learn from others' examples and just, but I do believe that that hard knock road does teach you a lot. Is it, what's the one with Morgan Freeman where he's God, where he plays God?
Is it Bruce Almighty?
Bruce Almighty. And he says, you pray and ask God for strength. What do you think? He's just going to make you strong, or is he going to give you opportunities to build your strength?
Right.
So I do think a lot of it comes to that, right? Like, you're going to have to go through some sacrifice to be able to build your rounded edges, to be well-rounded, right? You're going to be able to have to go through some times of pivots to be able to move forward and keep moving and progressing. And I think that through the hard knocks is what's taught me a lot. And I wouldn't change that for the world, right?
Mhm.
Like, I wouldn't, I embrace the challenges I've had in my life. And now I seem to find myself looking for new challenges, right? How to get myself more uncomfortable. Because I know that when you're comfortable, life hands you something and you're going to get uncomfortable real quick. I would much rather seek that uncomfort and be able to deal with it more on my own than when life has to hand it to me.
So it goes back to like voluntary suffering over,
Right.
it's like you're going to suffer either way. Do you want to choose your way, or you want to stay comfortable and just get what, a random?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The like in fitness, there's two regrets. There's, Either you regret, you know, not waking up in the morning to go work out or do your things, or maybe it's not the two regrets, but or you get up in the morning and suffer to take that. You know what I mean? It's the two choices that you have.
Suffer now or
Oh
suffer
yeah, the
later.
two choices of pain. Either there's two ways to suffer, right? That's it. And you either suffer now or you suffer later.
Right.
But there's always those two.
There's going to be suffering either
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
Yeah. That's one of my favorite things too, and something that I do, and a lot of people ask me because, I mean, I do some pretty wild shit,
yeah,
and I always tell people, I'm like, hey, do not do what I do, but probably because like it would hurt you, right? Like, don't do what I do. But the reason why I choose to do that is because I know no one else will, and because I know that I have to choose my own form of suffering in order to grow better.
for sure.
Because once you get to a certain point, right, it's kind of like you can't keep doing the same things and getting the same results, or you're going to become stagnated. We all want to grow, especially like with growth mindset, becoming better, getting into that uncomfortable zone voluntarily is the only way.
For sure.
And you have autonomy too, right? When you choose to do something hard, there's no complaints,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
When something hard comes at you and it was a blind side, you can sit and bitch and moan about it and like, oh, yada, yada, yada. But when you can choose to put yourself in that position, can't complain because it's your choice. And I think that's really empowering. It's
For
like,
sure.
I chose this road
For sure.
because I am the storm.
I am the storm.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Dude, I like, we're talking about well-rounded individual again. Man, the pivots that you had to make to be able to stay in your running journey, like in just day-to-day life, if you try 75 and hard, you will find out within the first 3 days. The simple tasks become very hard when you stack your day-to-day on top of it. And to be able to have the discipline to continue to choose that hard road, to choose you. I mean, I remember it would be, 10 o'clock at night. You're like, I got to get my running. I got to get it in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you'd strap up the boots and Lord knows you didn't want to do it. Lord knows everything in your head was probably saying, nah, dude, just take it easy. You'll be recovered for tomorrow. Run harder.
Right. And I mean, that thought has crossed my mind a million times. But what I've done in order to be able to always follow through is just make it a non-negotiable. There are times when you have to like really like in your head get into like, is this going to be benefit or be a detriment to my health or my life? Most of the time, 99% of the time, you can do it and will not be detrimental. However, there are times when you kind of have to like take a step back, but making it non-negotiable. Like we're doing this today.
That's huge.
That's the thing is like, today I'm doing this and all this other shit could happen. But one thing is guaranteed. I am doing this. And when it's, my run, right? So, and a lot of times like what will happen with me at times, like if I'll have someone that will cancel or move a time, right? And I'll have an hour between clients. First thing I do, if I don't have anything that's more prying, or if I haven't already planned something else, hit the street. Because number one, I can't waste time. I want to get things done that matter to me. And knowing that I had that availability and I chose not to take action, I cannot live with that. And I just can't justify it. There are times when you have to like shift your day around in order to make things work, but making sure that you're always staying true to who you want to be. Because
Sure.
let's just armchair quarterback it real quick. And you're watching someone else's journey. You're like, oh man, dude, he had a total hour. And instead of going for the run, he just like sat down.
He ate Skittles.
Yeah, he did whatever, right?
Yeah.
Insert thing.
Yeah.
And you know, there's a lot of armchair quarterbacks in the world.
For
and
sure.
that's one thing that I vow to never be.
It's funny you say the non-negotiable. I was just thinking about that. Like I always give myself one of my hardest tasks as my non-negotiable for that day. So a lot of people in sales will always ask me like, "Man, like you just don't care. Like you just walk in, like you don't know who it is. Like you don't care." And like a lot of those uncomfortable moments, you got to put yourself into, and that's got to be your non-negotiable, right? Like this has got to get done. And so yeah, I love that. That's one thing I would add in there. As a well-rounded individual, you add non-negotiables in your life that you just don't pivot on. Like this is what I'm doing. So yeah, that's a good one too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I like that. And that goes back, makes it easier to say no to things too. And you have
Yeah.
a non-negotiable that you're like, hey, I got this thing that I have to do.
Yeah.
And people are like, what? You're like, well, I have to go run 8 miles right now. They're like, but it's 8 p.m.
Yeah.
and it's Saturday night.
And it's raining.
I'm sorry. Look, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but I want to like myself later more than I want to do what you want to do.
Facts.
Right. And
I want to love me.
yeah, when you truly love the thing too, right? The thing can be hard, right? And I feel like it almost like it should be hard, right? Because when you make a non-negotiable something that's easy, that's not really a
I'm
non-negotiable.
gonna eat a PB&J, non-negotiable.
Yeah, that might get hard eventually. but you need to make your non-negotiable something difficult, something that is unique, that is not, I don't necessarily want to say difficult, not difficult physically, but something that wouldn't be easy for someone to take action on, something that does make you uncomfortable again. We don't want a smooth non-negotiable. That doesn't count.
No, for sure. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things I think that make that, and a lot of different, just different ups and downs in life that you go through to be able to build that well-roundedness of yourself. And
Right.
so to pivot back to what you were asking, do you think that I had to go through those hard times? Of course, I think that, you know, I go to church a lot now. I believe that life is handed not to you, but for you,
Mhm.
right? And it's to build the character, to build the person, to build the warrior that you want to become. And so, yeah, to look back on it all, I wouldn't change not a thing of it. And I would understand having to go through those sacrifices and hard times. And looking forward, I think that there's going to be some sacrifices and hard times that I, you know, going to have to deal with. So,
Right.
for sure.
Hopefully less self-inflicted.
Yeah, for sure. For
Right.
sure.
Yeah, no, and I would agree with you, man, because, you know, going back to just like, I have to be one of the luckiest people alive, right? So I've been unlucky in some things. Like I had 2 knee surgeries, both, you know, in the cage, both in big fights that could have changed the trajectory of my life. That was unlucky. But the things that really mattered in my life were lucky, right? I look back on it, maybe that's unlucky in the time, but my life has turned out great. And there are things that, you know, I would never have my son if it wasn't for my knee injuries, right? Now I'm lucky. I'm lucky
Yeah.
that we don't realize things that happen to us are happening for us at times.
Yeah.
But what I mean by I'm lucky is I have also been through like so many things that were just like, could have been life-changing in a bad way for people. But, you know, something my mom used to tell me whenever I was in high school, or maybe it was my mom, maybe it was someone else. I think it was my mom. It said my ability to step in shit and smell like roses was just uncanny. And so, because I was around a lot of drugs too growing up. Like I grew up in like Appalachia, right?
Yeah.
In the late 90s and early 2000s. And I was actually talking with someone today about this because I was explaining that you were coming on the podcast and stuff like that. And I can't even tell you, because where I grew up, there's just like so many good people and great athletes and stuff like that. But I can't even tell you the amount, and especially good athletes, of people that I know from 2001, when I graduated high school, to let's say to the mid teens, right? 2013, 15. I can't count on my fingers and toes the amount of kids that I grew up with that are dead because of opiate addiction and amongst other things.
Yeah.
Drinking and driving, things of that nature. And one of the luckiest things that ever happened to me that looked bad in the moment was I was arrested for DUI 2 weeks after my 18th birthday in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And I was going to university the fall of 2001. And at that point, I was arrested. I spent the night in jail in Horry County, South Carolina. As an 18-year-old, it was horrible. Like, that was the worst night of my life at that point. But I'm really glad that it happened to me now because I can look back on it and, like, there's a lot of growth that came from that. But what that did was it didn't allow me to go to university where all my friends were going, where I was for sure going to fail out and waste a lot of money, and who knows what could have happened in my life. But instead, 9/11 happens in September. I'm being a loser. Sleep until 3 p.m. every day, drinking every night, living at my mom's, and she had had enough. And basically what had happened, this was October, I think, of 2001. And she was like, have you ever thought about like seeing a recruiter or something? Because I was being a total loser. I wasn't wrestling in college. I wasn't even going to college. I was just doing nothing. Because I was throwing myself a pity party. And so I went to the recruiter one day because I wanted to be able to go home, and when my parents asked me what I do today, I wanted to tell them something other than get high and drunk, right?
Yeah.
So, but I went in with confidence that there was no way I was going to the military because I was like, yeah, hey, man, like, look, I even told him I'm here because my mom asked me to come. Like, you're not going to allow me in because I have all these charges in South Carolina right now. Like, I'm ineligible. And at this point, October 2001, they're looking for young men, right, that are willing to volunteer.
Yeah.
So it sounds awesome when I'm like, yeah, I joined the military in October 2001. People think it's super altruistic, but it wasn't. It was to save my own ass, right? So what I did was I scored really high on my ASVAB, and they're like, well, let's talk to the commander. They talked to the commander. The commander wrote Horry County in South Carolina, said, hey, he's a good kid. He's an athlete. You know, he's never been in trouble before, but he has these charges, yada, yada, yada. If he joins and fulfills his duty, will you drop the charges? And they complied. They obliged. And so my parents were super happy. So it was basically like I could have not gone, but it wasn't a good alternative.
Yeah.
Right? So that got me into the military, which got me out of the place that I needed to be out of more than anything in the world.
Right.
And completely changed the trajectory of my life in such a positive way because it put me on my own. It got me completely away from everything that I'd ever known and everything I was comfortable with. And it was like a sink or swim, right? I mean, I know there are millions of kids that have done it, but it's scary when you're 18 years old to go to the military during a wartime and not know what's going to happen and have to figure it out.
For sure.
So,
and it took you to show up too. Like
right.
like you said, like, I mean, you could have went back home that day and just like, yeah, no, I didn't do anything today. I'll do it tomorrow. But you made that non-negotiable, right?
Yeah.
And you were like, hey, I got to go.
I knew that I didn't want to be a loser anymore.
Yeah.
And because I had been a winner my whole life. I had always been a winner. But in that season, I was for sure a fucking loser. And I was so tired of being a loser that I had to make a change. And this is a long way to say that it happened for me. I think about that like every June 6, 2001, every June, I think, man, I was in jail in Horry County in South Carolina, like this night 23 years ago. And I'm so happy that it happened because I don't know where I'd be without it. But in the moment, it was the worst night of my life.
It's crazy how things happen like that.
Yeah.
Remember when you wrecked your BMW?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then you were like, and then you got a Honda out of it.
Yeah, the Honda's great.
Yeah, and it's great, dude. It's wild how it happens like that. You know?
Yeah, that's another one. I mean, that's on a much lower level of like fault of my own.
Yeah.
but yeah, I remember. So for everyone listening, I wrecked my BMW with my son in the car. It was a total freak accident. I won't get into the details, but it was a total freak accident, and it should have never happened. But Max picked me up from the wreck. And I remember saying to you, Max, like, what the fuck? Like, why does, at the time of my life, I was going through a rough patch in life.
You were going through a rough season.
And
to like add back to what you were talking about through the season of when you went to the military, right? Like, I think I'm reading Winning right now by Tim Grove. I know you've read it. But like when they talk about winning and they talk about like, dude, you don't always win. Winning's not always going to be on your side, right? There's some seasons of life that you have to go through taking the L. And another part of, you that's great is that you take that L as a lesson and you learn and you grow and you pivot. And I think that's something you did very great in the military and going there. And then I think that's something you did very great with your accident that night and many other things that I've seen in your life, Adam, like many other things.
Yeah, I've taken some L's.
Yeah, some lessons for sure.
Yeah, that's how like I've really learned to play the long game. But I remember that night thinking like, when is this ever going to turn around? I remember I would like, there were a few nights when I would look up the sky and be like, yo, like, what's up? Like, is this ever going to turn around? And it did turn around for me. Not long after that, I went from probably the hardest season of my life to the best season of my life. Yeah, it's continually, you know what I mean? Like,
I remember.
It's continual growth, playing the long game, and not beating yourself up or sulking in the L's.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's so important about being able, because a lot of times people are like, how did you turn a loss into like a long-term win? And it comes from not being a crybaby about it, not sulking in your woes, but saying, all right, that happened. Let's move forward. One of my favorite sayings that I've recently learned, I don't even know where I got this, but what happened, happened. It couldn't have happened any other way because it didn't.
Fire.
That, my friend, is facts.
Yeah, that's fire. And man, I just had something I wanted to share about, just being able to pivot like that. But
I think a lot of it comes from having to pivot so often.
Yeah.
I was really self-destructive through my 20s too. Like even when I was in the military, I was an absolute wild man. I think that comes back to just like growing up, you know what I mean? Like not having a whole lot of really great examples. Where I come from, there are a lot of really great athletes that could have made it that didn't because they were maniacs. And I've thought about that a lot throughout my life. Like when something bad has happened to me, I'm like, I don't want to be someone that kids from that town point at and say, he could have been someone. I don't want to continue to be someone. Right?
For sure.
Don't let the L's hold you down and keep you down. Right? Play the long game.
It's a marathon, not a race.
Yeah.
And my friend used to always tell me that. It's a marathon, not a race. Yeah. Being able to get back up quickly, like you were saying, don't sulk in it. Life's going to come at you. You gotta learn to get up and move on. And there's a lot of blessings in life, and there's a lot of things that you got to learn from in life. That's what it was that I wanted to say. So another part of well-rounded individual, I would say, is accepting failure and seeking failure out. I think too often now we, don't fail. Oh, don't fail. But failure is a huge part of life. And if you ask anybody who's hugely successful, they will say they failed many times on their road to success. So I always say fail first, fail fast, fail often. I can't remember where I got that from, but I definitely picked it up from someone. Um, but I love that, because you got to go through go through life like looking at what's my blind side. And that's how you get better, right? Where's my blind side at? Where am I going to not see? And it's good to have friends like yourself to be like, hey, Adam, what are some of my blind spots? You know what I mean? As a father, as a husband, and just as an overall friend or human being.
Yeah, I wasn't a very good husband, so that's not a good question for me.
Well,
I'm just, that's what I hear.
There's two sides to every story.
Yeah.
I thought you was great.
Yeah.
Even better father.
Yeah.
You're an amazing father.
Thank
I
you, bro.
definitely look up to you. And just, watching you with Rory is amazing, man.
Let's go back to, I want to add on to what you were just saying right now. So we were talking about fail first, fail fast, and fail often. I think that is important, but I think there's a mindset to that as well. Don't go into it wanting or expecting to fail. Go into every situation wanting and thriving to win, but knowing you're going to fail eventually. Every game, walk in knowing that expecting to win, but know that it could happen that we fail every time, right? So I think some people they're like, oh, well, I'm going to fail. I'm like, yeah, of course you're going to fail because you had failure written on your face when you walked into it, right?
Yeah.
I feel like you need to have the intention to win, but be okay with failing.
Well, you got to want to win like you want to breathe.
Right.
And if you don't want to win, that's another part of like a well-rounded individual. And that's why I love Eric Thomas and I fell in love with his secret to success. When you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, then you'll be successful because there's going to be a lot in life that's handed to you that you've got to move, you got to transition, you got to pivot and get back at your end goal and the direction you were going. And that's going to take a lot. If you don't have the determination to win or succeed, when you get hit in the mouth once, twice, or 3 times, you're going to stay on the canvas. So it's if that's, like you were saying, is huge to have that drive and ambition to win. One thing, so on my way to work, I will literally, and this started when we went to Hilton, when you and I moved to Hilton, I will literally be in tears because you will not break me from my goal. Like I am going to, it's you or me, and I promise you I'm going to get it. And I think that you got to take that mentality in a lot of things you do in life, right? Like, because you're going to be handed failures along the way. And if you can take, okay, and then learn it, lesson done, and then move and make that a part of your game plan to make you that much better, dude, you become unstoppable.
Yeah.
And then everybody looks to you, like I've always in sales. So we always have people and we're always looking at the numbers and everybody's looking to you like, man, how's he doing it? My favorite is when they start to say you're cheating. I love that. I love that. I mean, okay. Yeah. But that's when you know. That's when you know you're doing the things that you got to be able to win.
Yeah. One of the things that I think about of you a lot is I don't know if you remember this, so tell me if you remember this, but like through the pandemic, remember when we would run like half marathons for funsies? Yeah. So we finished a half marathon during the pandemic. It was me, you, and Jordan.
Yeah.
And
I was dying.
And we had finished, and it was like mad hot, but we finished strong.
Yeah.
And we were walking down the street, and this was like the point of pandemic where like we didn't know what was gonna happen, and like you looked at me and you're like, well, I can tell you one thing. You're like, I want our team.
Yeah.
Like
I count on us.
We're gonna win.
I got
my money on me.
Yeah, I got my money on this team right here. I remember that. Yeah. I got my money on us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's another big thing. Bet on yourself. I think you helped me out with that when the move from Orange Theory to Hilton, because Orange Theory, I was at a steady cush salary plus commissions. My commissions were trash. That's usually how it happens. If they're paying you more in salary and less commissions, it's a bad thing. Don't do it. uh, but I remember they were like, it was $9.50 an hour plus commissions. Like that's all you were guaranteed to make was the $9.50 an hour. And I remember us taking that bet on ourselves. We just had our kids. You just had Rory. I just had Jordan. And that was the best thing I ever did in my life.
Yeah.
That built so much confidence in me. And I'll do it again and again and again. And our boss, Jay, I used to drive him crazy because I'm like, dude, please put me in front of whoever. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm coming out on top. I promise you that.
Yeah.
We had, because the department we were in, in Hilton, we had one sales manager that kind of used to talk down to us. He wasn't the coolest guy, but he thought he was everybody. He thought he was like all that in a bag of chips. And I just remember looking him dead in the face, bro. I will outclose you any day. You put me in anything. I don't care if it's selling candy bars, timeshare, whatever you want. You pick. I'm gonna outclose you. And he respected me from then on. He wouldn't yeah.
Yeah.
And he knew what it was. I mean, I knew he wasn't G4 classified.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's part of what it comes back to, the confidence and the non-negotiable.
Yeah.
We will win.
Yeah.
But going back to just betting on yourself too, I think that man, you have to surround yourself with people who also do that. You cannot surround yourself with people who sit in comfortability and expect to excel, because there's so many people so miserably content with a mediocrity that I could never live. And I think that's why people like us
gravitate
towards one another. Yeah, absolutely.
You show me your top 5 friends and I'll show you exactly what you're made out to be.
Right.
And that was another hard thing. Like sometimes you got to pivot, and friends that aren't helping you in that journey, that is huge, man. That's hard. I had to deal with that a lot in just getting clean. My old roommate, me and him were great friends. And I remember the first month I was getting clean, he was very cool with me getting clean. But then after that, and he was still using, it became different. And it was like, oh, you're doing that. Oh, you're better. And I legitimately had to cut him off. I remember him, I was probably 6-7 months clean, and thank God I had the confidence at the time. But I remember busting out a line of cocaine and was like, hey, man, you want to? And I was like, nah, dude, not even. And that was when I knew. Like that point, I was like, I am beating this thing.
Yeah.
And so I had to cut him out of my life. And he was a huge friend to me. And so if you don't learn to do that and do that quick, they will sink you down. And it doesn't mean that I don't have a lot of love for him, because I still do. I wish he was still around to this day. I would call him up and see how he's doing. But yeah, sometimes you got to make that no, right?
Right.
Nope, this is not me.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate. There are people that you love that you just have to release.
Yeah.
And because if you hold on to it, you'll sink to the bottom too.
For sure.
You can't hold on to an anchor.
No. And you can't save somebody if you're, on your way up.
Right.
And I think that's what I would have loved to have been able to reach out. I mean, he's no longer with us, unfortunately. I would have loved to have been able to reach out and help him. Mm-hmm. That's one I definitely go back at night, and that's a regret that I have. But
it's not your fault, though.
Yeah, I know. But at the same time, and in looking back on it, I do try to give myself grace in the fact that I was trying to make it out, and I had to get out. And I don't know. I guess I didn't do it soon enough in my time frame that I would have liked to.
Right. Well, we all have our own time frames, and like we said, life is short, but life is long.
Yeah.
Playing the long game. So let's transition and pivot, because we got about 15 minutes left here.
Yeah.
I really want to get into some family stuff too.
Yeah. Hey. Yeah.
Because I think family is a huge component of your well-roundedness and just your ability to be a person that changes a cycle, right? And that's something I thought about too, because I mean, I know obviously you've mentioned it before, your dad wasn't around, and I think you had to learn the hard way. And you mentioned that you didn't want your kids to have to learn the hard way too, and you hope that it wasn't. I think because of the example that you set, they won't have to learn the hard way.
Yeah, I pray for that.
And that's what's so important, is breaking that cycle and changing their options.
For sure. And being their hero. I think, things that I stress about now is just, my son's falling into the same path that I fell into, right? But I just have to continue to try to work on being their hero to where I inspire them to want to be like me. I remember a lot of my childhood, I never wanted to be like my dad. And my dad used drugs a lot. And when I would use drugs, I would be like, you're just like him, You're a piece of shit. You're nothing. You're a piece of shit. So hopefully my sons are like, dude, I want to be just like my dad. And, I can't help but to look at you and Rory and just be like, dude, you're his hero, bro. And I think that's huge. And I look up to you a lot in that. And, and just the family dynamic you have with you and your son is incredible. And then also, too, to the non-negotiables, those non-negotiables now shift to your family and the things that you're just not going to pivot around in order to give him the time, in order to give him the love and caring that he needs to always have you in his life. And I think that it's a bit of selfishness on my part too with my kids, because I never had my dad in my life. And to be able to have those moments with my kids is like me getting that back, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, absolutely. I do not want to miss out on those. And I find myself like almost in tears because it just goes so fast. Like I just remember when Jordan was born. Now he's 5, and I got Jackson and Addie on his side.
That's crazy, right? Jordan and Rory both going to kindergarten this year.
Yeah, that's wild.
And something that I want to add on to when you were talking about, like, wanting to provide more, and you want to be a person that they want to be like, right? And to keep them away from the things that you had to go through. And that comes back to the example you set, because something that Ed Milet always says is that with children, lessons are caught, not taught.
Facts.
Because they're watching you. Facts. They might not be listening to you. They're definitely not listening to if you're saying things that you're not doing.
Yeah. So, funny story. Jax, the other day, I was working out at home yesterday. And I was shoulder pressing 70s. And so it was like my last set. And I was like, fuck. And he goes, Dad, why'd you say that? And I was like, I don't know. I shouldn't have. I was just I was struggling to get the weight up. And he's like, I said that the other day. And I was like, you did? And he's like, yeah, I bumped my head on my bunk bed. I was jumping. And I said, fuck. And I was like, let's not say that again, buddy. So they are caught. They are caught. They are not taught.
Yeah, they are caught. That's funny, though.
Yeah.
That's funny.
It was the cutest thing, his raspy voice. I love him.
Yeah, he's funny. All your kids are funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man.
They're blessings, for sure.
Yeah, you know what's funny is that Rory has been, he's really liking running. We're going to, we're doing the run club every Friday night. Shout out Ray B Fit.
Let's go.
There's a run club that we do every Friday night at Mountains Edge Park. So anytime we go, like on what was the last holiday? 4th of July. We went to downtown Summerlin, and I pushed his stroller there so he could sit in it while we watched fireworks. And Rory, he has got to be doing something all the time. And he looked at me and he went, "Wanting?" And I'm like, yeah, usually that's what we do with this thing, man. But so he likes to run. I've been pushing him in that stroller
since day one.
I've run the tires off of that stroller
so many
5
strollers.
or 6 times.
Yeah, I've always been like, how do you run the tires out on a stroller? And dude, you've done it several times in a row.
Yeah, I know how to fix it. Well, I know where to get them fixed now.
Let me just say that if you ever need it, my guys got you.
So through the pandemic, the first time I ran the tires off the stroller, it was to Jordan's birthday party. And because remember, I ran to the birthday party and home, and on the way home, I blew a tire. And So that was during the pandemic, and there was like no place to get like things like, well, not quite during the pandemic because that was February. So it was of 21, I think, and because I'm pretty sure it was Jordan's birthday, and at that point, I didn't know how to get the tire changed, so I just brought a brand new stroller, and I ran the tires off of that one too.
I was just thinking one thing you guys always have is running.
Yeah,
For sure. That's huge.
yeah,
I hope that like when you guys get older, you guys continue to do that.
yeah, yeah. Me too. Um,
Sorry, I love kids. I love kids. I love family. Like I love being able to enjoy those moments.
yeah,
Because like I said, selfishly, I don't really, I don't have them.
yeah,
So anything like that, like I work on my truck with my boys.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And though it's stressful because they will drop bolts down your engine bay and you're like, oh my God. Oh, Dad. Yeah, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I think that that's great though, and I think that that's something that makes you such a great dad. Is that you can call it selfish if you want, but I don't think it. Maybe it's selfish. I don't think nothing is like completely and purely altruistic, right? Because when we do things for others, I mean, selfishly, it makes us feel good too, right?
Yeah.
But you not only is that something that's going to benefit your son to have those type of memories with you, but you deserve that too.
Thank you. Thank you. That's huge.
Because it's important.
No, I agree completely. A lot of baggage unpacked over life is things that I've had to, unpack with just the things that I never got, you know. But it's awesome. It's been so awesome, and I'll never forget the day that I got to tell my dad thank you for showing me what not to do. And I mean I got this from my friend Danny. When I was having a baby, I was like, dude, I don't know what to do. And he's like, well, you know what not to do. So just show up, and I promise you're going to figure it out from there.
Yeah.
And I think that that is so true in fatherhood, in being a good husband, is just show up. And, just like relationships, they're not easy, but if you continue to look on how you can be a better person, look at your blind side in your relationship, things that you're falling short on. And I always say, when you met your wife, you had your representative out, right? Like you were doing all the things, dotting all the I's, crossing all the T's, making sure you're like wowing her, right? But then after a time, they say your representative goes away. You lose that honeymoon season, right? But it's really we just get lazy. We get lazy to the fact of trying to win them over and romance them the way that we did. So I think it's important, as much as I try to focus on my sales career and building that and becoming an amazing dad or father, it's important to work on my relationship with my wife and my spouse as well. Because ultimately, I do think that, I remember when I had dreams of, my mom and my dad pulling me apart when I was, when they were going through a divorce when I was young. And that weighs so much on the kid's life
Yeah.
too. So I think that, and I love my wife. She's my rock, and she's definitely a big reason where I'm at today. But
Yeah, we're gonna have to make a separate podcast about that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, she's amazing. But yeah, it's, continuously working on yourself and continuously growing. And when it comes to my kids, I hope to always inspire them and be their hero. I hope that I have taught them by what they've seen and not what I've been shouting at them or yelling at them. And with my wife, I hope to continue to fall in love with her each and every day like I did the first day, and to continue that love and growth and development.
Well, I've no doubt that if that's what you desire, that's what you will make happen. You've made it through the mud, bro. Like, obviously I know that like you want more, but if you look at like, I remember a story you told me about a teenage Max having to sleep on a park bench in the winter in Utah. And then that kid, where you are now. You've made it. There's more to come. But
Yeah, there's a lot more. I definitely want to continue to go out and be that hero for my family, my friends, and see what I can do next.
yeah, man. Fuck, dude. I feel like we could do 3 of these in a row, bro.
For sure.
I guarantee.
For sure. I mean, not even like there's so many things I want to unpack with you because dude, you're a legend, bro.
Yeah,
like you're such a rock, and it's just always that person you can look to count on, you know. And I think that's another big part of life, you know. Who can you count on? What friend can you call at 4 a.m? It's gonna be there for you.
Right.
You're one of them.
Thank you. Likewise. You've proved it for me. I mean, we won't get into it here, but you picked me up from some places, bro. And
you would have done the same if you knew me earlier.
I appreciate you, man, and I'm proud of you. I'm proud to call you a friend, and we got more to unpack here, so you're coming back for sure.
For sure. Yeah, I got a lot of love for you, bro, and I'm super proud of you as well. Yeah. I mean, you overcome a lot of obstacles to be the man you are today, and I know that path wasn't easy, but you've done it.
Well, it's not over.
Facts.
We're playing the long game.
Let's go.
We're just gonna keep getting better.
From this marathon, baby.
Let's wrap this bitch up.
Yeah.
So, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Wish we had more time. Max is definitely gonna have to come back. Like I said, we can sit here and talk about this for hours and hours and hours, but I want to make sure you guys check us out on YouTube. Go to Well-Rounded Individual on YouTube. Subscribe, like, share this video if you got anything out of it, if it benefited you, if it made you laugh, if it made you smile, if you learned something. Share these videos. That's the way we're going to get better. That's the way we're going to get bigger, and that's the way we're going to impact more lives. So once again, thank you guys all for tuning in, and catch us next week.
Thank you.